Mobile hunters, if you're interested in upping your mobile game, then head to tetherednation.com and check out their saddle gear. There are a few things you can actually buy that will help you become a better deer hunter or give you the freedom to hunt any tree or any situation. This is the reason why I started saddle hunting in the first place and why I use Tethered's gear. I can honestly say that Tethered's saddle gear has changed how I hunt for the better. Big tree, little tree, from the ground, it doesn't matter. I'm untethered by my gear to hunt the best setup for the situation, instead of hunting for a tree that my gear can use. My current core setup consists of the Phantom saddle, tethered one sticks, and the Predator platform, along with an assortment of their accessories. So if you want to up your mobile game, head over to tetherednation.com. If you're like me, you spend lots of time poring over maps, looking at weather data, all in an effort to help predict when and where my best times to hunt will be. It'd be nice if there was a reliable source with all this information in one place. Enter the Spartan Forge app. Unlike some other predictive apps on the market, Spartan Forge was created from military combat intelligence experience tailored for hunters and stands at the nexus of machine learning and white-tailed deer hunting. No more man-made algorithms. This is a predictive model based on real GPS-collared deer data, historical and predictive weather, and the next level of mapping imagery, all at my fingertips. I've been using the iOS app this season, and it has replaced all my other mapping tools. Visit SpartanForge.ai and sign up today, or head to your iOS or Android app store. Use the promo code TRUTH to save some money and download it today. Welcome to the Truth from a Stand Deer Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Skull Brew Coffee Company. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 275. Today I'm joined by my buddy Chris Derrick to catch up on some Montana whitetails and chasing Osceola turkeys, so stay tuned. All right. What is up, everyone? Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you are doing well. Hope you are feeling fine. It is hard to believe that it is just a couple days away from being April. I'm not going to complain about it, man, because I am ready for some decent weather. We've had some teasers here and there over the past couple weeks where we've had some mid-60s days. We've had some, days that touched the 70s, which actually, truth be told, that was probably just a little warmer than I wanted quite yet. I don't want to skip spring into summer. I want to kind of enjoy spring, those like 50-degree mornings, and where it gets into like the 60s. It's something that kind of almost mimics fall to a degree, to be honest with you. That's kind of like the I think it's the weather we all like. So anything that kind of reminds me of that is what I dig. So I'm hoping that we get a little bit of the lead in into summer, as opposed to last year, which felt like a couple nice days and then bam, summer. Got your heat, got your humidity, got your nasty, buggy, kind of crappy weather. I shouldn't say crappy, but not my favorite weather. We'll put it that way. So just about done scouting locally here. Have one last chunk I need to kind of check out, and then I'll kind of put a pin in it for the year around here. Have a lot of my cameras up. I have a few that I still need to get out in a couple places, but I have a few cameras kind of hanging in some areas that were brand new to me, at least locally. Well, I shouldn't say brand new to me. I was aware of them. I had maybe walked through them previously, just hadn't had the time to put in to those particular areas to, find a place to hang a camera, or, to kind of suss it out even further to see if it's something I was even remotely interested in. So I did a lot of that this off season. Was a lot of just kind of going to some new areas. Went back through some previous areas, to kind of check out where the sign was from last year, making sure everything was kind of, or I guess similar to what I had expected or what I had come to understand from previous years scouting. And then really this year locally kind of focused on, can I find a couple new spots? And I think out of all the walking that I've done, I want to say maybe two spots locally that are new that I think might produce. Well, I shouldn't say that. Maybe three, because one is relatively close to an area that I already hunt, but it's just kind of I'm better figuring out kind of how the deer are using this particular piece, which gave me an additional setup. So it's not like it's completely separate from another area. But there's one other spot that I want to check out that's been on my list actually the past 2 years. I just haven't made it to it. So I'm going to plan to do that. And there might be one other area I'll dive into. I'm kind of on the fence. It might honestly be just kind of a flyer hunt early part of the season. Because I think it could, if it's going to be good, I think it'll be good during the early part of the year. But I would like to take a quick walk through that particular piece. We'll see if that plays out or not. And then, of course, I still need to get to my northern area, which the weather just seems to be keeping me held back to a degree. But hopefully that'll happen here in the not so distant future. What I am stoked about though is I think I mentioned it previously, is I'm going to be doing a turkey hunt in that area this year and actually take some time off. I mean, you guys know me pretty well by this point. I'm a diehard whitetail hunter. Turkey hunting is just one of those things I do to pass some time, get out into the woods, maybe catch a deer scout while I'm out taking my gun for a walk. This year is a little bit different, where I'm actually pretty jazzed, and this is kind of a nice little lead into today's podcast, but I'm pretty stoked to actually do some turkey hunting this year. Because usually, like I said, if I do anything, or what I typically will do is go back home, spend some time with my in-laws and with my father-in-law specifically, and some of his buddies down at our hunting camp, and a lot of beer drinking and card playing and stuff like that. And to be honest with you, it makes for a rough turkey morning. And so with that, I'm usually like, if I get out and chase some birds, great. If not, it was really more the intention of going back and hanging out with all the old timers and spending some time with them. So turkey hunting really kind of isn't the priority on that trip. But this year I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm actually headed to the spot that I scouted last year for deer, and I'm planning to hunt more often this year for deer and do some turkey hunting there. So I'll be chasing mountain birds, which will be super cool. And I typically never take any time off the turkey hunt. I'm actually taking a couple days off at the opener to do some hunting, to get after some mountain birds. I think my buddy Aaron Hepler, I think, will be with me. Tom, I think, will be with us. And then my old buddy Road Dog Chad Sylvester may end up making the road trip from Ohio, joining up with us to do some turkey hunting and a little bit of deer scouting. But all that to say, a little bit of a lead-in or foreshadowing for today's podcast. I have my buddy Chris Derrick on. He is the Whitetail Product Line Manager for Sitka Gear. So you probably heard his voice from time to time hop on the podcast with me to talk about different pieces of gear that they have coming out and stuff like that. And this year, they actually launched. The one thing that I was super stoked about was actually a turkey vest, because I'm one of those guys. I don't know if it's just I'm lazy about it or what, but I would typically just jam all my stuff in my pockets, which actually made it for kind of a miserable hike if you're doing any type of running and gunning after birds. You got shit in your pockets that are flopping around, and it's uncomfortable. And I've lost plenty of stuff that way, or broke a slate call or whatever it is by sitting on it and just not taking care of my gear, essentially. And so they have a turkey vest that they put out this year, which is super cool, super sleek. We'll go over that and talk about all the ins and outs of that. But the thing that Chris is super passionate about and that I was really stoked about was actually their Equinox Guard gear that they're actually putting out. And it's under the umbrella of their turkey gear. And it's tick repellent, mosquito repellent. Like, it's just a really cool garment. And I immediately went to my whitetail mindset and was like, this is perfect for me for hunting in and around swamps or water where you're going to get mosquito-y and buggy and shitty that early part of whitetail season, and also makes obviously phenomenal turkey hunting gear. So we talk a lot about the gear that they have coming out. We catch up with Chris a little bit on his Montana hunt. He killed a killer buck in Montana this year, and he just got done getting after some Osceolas in Florida. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into today's podcast. But before I do that, I want to make a quick mention that our buddies over at Exodus still have that opportunity going just to the end of this month, so the end of March. First time ever that you can actually trade in your current Exodus camera and get some money toward a new one. So first time ever, they're offering a trade-in program for the remainder of March. To get involved, you need to have a current Exodus camera registered in their database. You can trade in any Lift 2, or Trek and lock in a $100 savings off the Render or Render bundle. If you like the idea of trading up, and who wouldn't, here's what you'll need to do. Go to ExodusOutdoorGear.com, use the promo code TRADEUP, that's TRADEUP at checkout, to lock in your $100 savings. After the order, the Exodus team will email you a shipping label with the order number for reference to your email. Print the return label, put it on a box, put your camera in a box, send it back to Exodus, and when they get the camera, they will ship you your order. If that was a lot to follow, you can head over to the ExodusOutdoorGear.com and check out the information on their website, or you can check out the show notes. I'll have a link in the show notes that will direct you to the correct place to get all the information. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into today's podcast, and as always, I want to thank you all for listening. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. And today we are going to talk a little bit of gear, and we always take a little departure from whitetails around this time of year to talk a little bit of the springs, or the kings of springs, and a little bit of gobbler thunder. And I'm joined by my buddy, Mr. Chris Derrick from Sitka Gear. How's it going, Chris?
Going very well. Thanks for having me on.
You bet, man. It seems like every so often we always have to have a touch base because you guys are always coming out with something new, and I'm always kind of intrigued by it, and I want to check it out. And so, so this was no different. You guys have some really cool stuff going on in terms of the turkey gear that you guys are developing. But before we jump into all that, I always have to ask, because the last time we talked, I kind of got a rundown of what was going on at the Derrick Ranch, where you have alpacas, you have bees, you've got all kinds of things going on out there. Anything added to the ranch at this point, or are you at status quo now?
Well, actually, we shedded, I would say. So, yeah, one thing about alpacas is I think they're like a chicken dinner. Everybody likes them. So from a wolf standpoint, so we did offload the alpacas, and we just we board some horses out here now. But yeah, kind of slowed some back. So get an older house built in 1890, you have a lot to work on.
Yeah, yeah, man. I bet the 1890, man. I bet the honey-do list is never ending on that.
Yeah, there's never ending host of problems, but it's a fun house. So
right, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, my house was not built in 1890s, and there seems to always be an issue. And truth be told, I just remodeled my entire basement, and that was based on just kind of like a normal issue that would come up with like a basement and had to have a sump pump put in, so they had to rip out like half a wall, part of the floor, and so then it just became like, well, I was going to redo the basement, and I was hoping to have to do it in maybe 5 years, but it looks like it got expedited to right now. And I just finished that up, I don't know, right after the first of the year. But it's pretty sweet, man. I'll have to send you some pictures. It is a bourbon bar basement and cigar bar. So I've got like a smoking fan in the wall where I can have like a cigar and a good glass of bourbon and a big screen TV and watch football games or wrestling or whatever it is that I want to watch. Full on man cave with my mounts and stuff like that. So I'm pretty stoked about it. So it was a happy kind of turn of events, but I did a lot of the work myself, and it was a pain in the ass.
it's a long drive, but I'm coming over.
Yeah.
So,
Nice. It is a long drive, man. I want to say, I don't know exactly where you're at. I'm guessing Bozeman, right, is where you're at?
yeah, in Bozeman. So yeah, that would be a couple of day drive for a drink. So
Yeah, it would. I'd have to break out the top shelf stuff for you for that drive, man. That's for sure. I think it took me, the last time I came out, I was going south. I was going to Dillon, and I think it was a total of 39 hours, that drive.
yeah, it is. It's a deceivingly long trip too. So
Yeah, we did it. We did it straight through. Well, there was three of us, so we just took turns driving through the entire trip, and like would take turns sleeping and stuff like that. But that was a trip that I don't want to do, but maybe like once a year, I would say.
yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure like even driving Pennsylvania or even across like New York State, you always feel like it's going to be tiny.
Yeah,
But it's not. It's like, oh, this thing keeps going.
yeah, I know. I want to say it felt like, not even felt like, I think we were literally in Montana for 8 hours until we got to, like, from the time we hit the Montana line until we hit, where we were staying in Dillon. I want to say it was like 8 hours. Is that about right? Like, to get across the state?
It takes a pretty good, yeah, I would say to get across the state. I'm just trying to think of what it takes me to get to like Miles City, and that's definitely in the 6 hour range. So yeah, I think you're about right.
Yeah, and there's some places where you hit, because we were going through some like reservation land and stuff like that, where there are like no gas stations, and you're looking at your gas gauge, going, oh man, like I don't know, it's like I don't know when the next gas station is, and by the looks of things, there's not going to be one anywhere near where we're at right now. So it's always a little
Start
touch and
sweating
go.
bullets.
Yeah.
It might be like that old Seinfeld episode where they're
Yeah.
far they can make it.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man. So man, we'll transition here to do a little bit of deer talk, because we always have to do that on this show. But man, I was just flipping back through, and I remembered seeing it, this fall. But I was flipping back through like your Instagram stuff and saw the buck that you killed, and that was in Montana, right?
It was, yep. It wasn't the exact buck I was going for, but definitely wound up being earlier season archery buck. So
Yeah.
and yeah, a lot of fun. My family, each one of my family members. So I had four bucks to do, 3 mule deer, and my 1 whitetail. So
Man, yeah, you guys had a good season. That's a hell of a buck too, man. He's a good look. And that's the funny thing. Like, people don't think of, when they start thinking of like Western hunting, if they're thinking of Western whitetails, a lot of times they'll, people's, I think, minds go to like the Dakotas, maybe even Idaho, mountain bucks or whatever. They, got some, some big whitetails up there, but people kind of sleep on Montana, I feel like, in terms of a really, really good whitetail state. And there are some hammer bucks out there, and you killed a dandy, man. That was a great deer.
yeah, I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun. The one we had in mind, we had called him Airplane because somebody had spotted him from an airplane during the summertime, and he would have been better. But
yeah, man, if you're able to see him from
that was my target.
Right, if you're able to see him from an airplane, man, that's I mean, that speaks volumes for the caliber of deer that would have been, for sure.
Well, it was a prop plane,
well,
all
yeah,
fairness.
Yeah, but still, I mean, that's still, it's like, there's times when I'm driving by one that I'm maybe not quite sure, and I'm not, from an airplane, that's, peeping one from there. If it's catching your eye from that distance, then it's got to be a worthy animal. But how'd that hunt come together, man? Like, so this buck wasn't necessarily the one you were after, but
no, he wasn't. I was hunting an area, and there's basically a place I call the Pinch on the property that I hunt. So you just get a lot of trails, and it kind of comes up out of a river bottom into a big sage flat that heads out to an alfalfa field, and they basically there's a lot of multiple trails that they cross a river, to get over there, like a finger of a river, and that all just typically funnels up this short little 15-yard hill. They come up, and most of I had hunted there a couple of different times, but I had never actually hunted that spot before, and so when I went in there, I had hunted it a few times and kept seeing them running up this hill, and they would always stop on this one spot just to give you a quick shot.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I had moved over there, I had pulled in. I had to actually get really close on a really exposed tree, but was able to do it. It was one of those trees that, like, the diameter base height, isn't super big, but then once you also can get up, about 15, 20 feet in the air, every movement you make, tends to move the whole tree if you've ever been in that situation.
Yeah.
But he came in last light, and, just ran up, stopped exactly where I started, 35 yards, and, hit him, and it was, just perfect. And so it turned out to be just a nice 10-point that we were looking for as one of our target bucks.
Nice.
So yeah,
That's awesome, man. So did you watch him over the summer and kind of have like some intel on him, or was he kind of a surprise in general?
no, I had seen him before. Honestly, I would have given him another year, but the way that he ran up and stopped, it was very, very quick. And so, it was one of those ones where you just see that. He's still a great deer.
Oh,
he just wasn't the exact deer I was looking for at the time. So, but that happens. But we get one buck here in Montana. So that, but really happy to do it. And then I was able to focus on getting the rest of my family deer, and everybody else was able to tag out. So that was good.
Nice. So you got a freezer full of venison and all kinds of and mule deer and all kinds of stuff. So you guys, so the Derrick crew is eating well, is what you're saying.
Yeah, we certainly have a full freezer this year. So, yeah, so absolutely, everybody. My wife, I remember when my wife started hunting, after our children were born, a couple of years after that, you bring her out, and then, she's like, oh, I just want to watch the deer, and then, now she's as hardcore as I am, and I really share my days.
Right.
She was like, "Yeah, I bet you wish you hadn't got me started because you're sharing the days in the field." So
Right,
since we have
right.
to trade off.
Well, the big question is how many hunting spots did you have to give up? That's the big question.
Well, they just become one and the same.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. It's like everything else when you're a dad. There's nothing in the house that you actually own that's actually yours.
Yeah. The
You know.
saying is, yeah, what's mine is mine and what's yours is mine too.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. What man. So I'm curious. I've never hunted whitetails in Montana. I've only ever hunted elk out there. But do you? Is it a lot of tree stand or elevated kind of situation, elevated hunting, or are you hunting a lot from the ground, or what do those setups kind of look like? Because I know I was in Kansas this year, and that's as far west I've ever hunted whitetails. And I know, of course, Montana has more trees than Kansas, but I mean, you certainly get into some areas in Montana that are very kind of plainsy to a degree, or high desert, or however you want to refer to it. And of course, Kansas for me was like 98% hunting from the ground. And so I'm just curious, like how much do you go back and forth? Then you guys are also dealing with like a lot of big ass cottonwoods and stuff like that aren't real conducive to try to climb in certain situations, right?
yeah. As far as the setups go, that's one of the challenges. So I was just talking about that buck with some of the cottonwoods because you'll either find they're so big they're impossible to do a mobile setup. So they really require a fixed stand and pre-planning, right?
Right.
And it just so happened where those deer were crossing up at the pinch um, only had trees of a certain diameter that allowed you to get close enough for a 35-ish yard shot.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are one of the challenges. Definitely lots of cottonwoods, but there's usually quite a few to pick from, and they tend to be focused in the private lands for the most part. There are some public land hunting opportunities, but a lot of them are private land in river bottoms, or
Right.
a lot of people will hunt with rifle, but from an archery standpoint, a lot of times you'll be focused on cottonwood bottoms for the most part. There are some hill bucks that you can find from a whitetail standpoint, but yeah, but in a lot of other areas, if you did want to ground hunt, you could.
Right.
There's enough terrain sometimes to allow yourself to make for setting up a stage hunt that way.
Right.
But spot and stock would be difficult, I would say, with a bow.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. For sure. It was certainly difficult in Kansas. I can attest. I can attest to that. I think spotting and stalking anything is a challenge, which in part is what makes it pretty fun. Is a lot of I'm just kind of learning here. I'm just kind of curious. So do you find that a lot of the whitetails are kind of down lower, closer to the private because that's where the ag is? And I'm imagining there's not a lot of pressure, right? I'm just kind of anecdotally from like videos that I've watched and stuff like that, because I don't know, other than my friend Tim who lives out there, I don't know anybody who consistently kind of hunts whitetails in Montana personally. And so I'm just always interested in what those look like. And so do they kind of lurk in and around the private land for the most part because that's where the consistent food is? And I'm assuming the pressure isn't too bad.
Well, I wouldn't say the pressure is not bad, but it probably depends on where you are. But they do tend to focus. That this is not like an exclusive thing, but I would say for the most part, they do spend a lot of their time in river bottoms and then coming up to ag. And the only reason, there are public opportunities, with BLM and stuff like that. But at the same time, just most of the land is privately held along river bottoms. It's not the same, from an elk hunting standpoint out here where a lot of the public lands are more mountainous. Just a lot of river bottoms tend to be focused, that way as well.
Right.
Yeah, so that's just tends to be where they live. Do the food and cover.
Yeah, that makes sense. So did you manage to get out anywhere else for whitetails this year, or was it Montana only for this season?
I was able to go to Ohio. Took a nice 10 point there with a friend of mine.
Nice.
over there. So that was another great opportunity to be able to go out there. So those were where I spent my days this year.
Nice. How was that your first time in Ohio?
No,
No.
I've definitely hunted there a couple of times, and I did hunt early season in South Carolina.
Okay.
Um,
That's
but
no, that's
that
that's
was
home, right?
yeah, no, well, yeah, I was originally Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, and was able to go and spend some time down there hunting with a couple of friends. And that was a little bit slower. It's very early season.
Mm.
We were hunting in August. It opens as early as that there. So just heat.
Yeah.
Deer are moving at the very, very twilight hours. So it was a pretty slow sit. I did hunt for, I guess, 2 days there, and but no opportunities.
Nice. Yeah, I've never hunted that far south. My dad lived in North Carolina. He actually just retired and moved back to Pennsylvania, and I kind of regret that I never made it down there to do any hunting while he was living there because I always wanted to go down for that super early opener. But the heat was always one of the reasons that kept me from doing it because I cannot stand hunting whitetails whenever it's 95 degrees out. It just doesn't feel right.
Yeah, it's definitely a different take. I consider it type two fun.
Yeah.
I think is the way you have to take a look at it. But
Yeah. Yeah. For
yeah,
sure. For
it
sure.
just produces a whole unique set of different situations.
Right.
So
Now the one thing down there, you can kill like 70 deer. I'm exaggerating, of course, but it's like it seems like in the south down there, it's like you can shoot as many as you can get tags for, essentially.
yeah, so hunting in Alabama, where when I essentially started hunting there very, very young. Yeah, it used to be in the region we were having in like the county that we were in was a buck and a doe a day.
Wow.
Nobody ever would do that. But actually, I've seen a lot of these southern states now are starting to issue tags and limiting people to a certain amount. So that's now changed over the past couple of years.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there was a big. I don't know how much traction it actually got because Pennsylvania is a 1 buck state as well, and we have some antler point restrictions and stuff like that, and they're slightly different depending on what part of the state you're in, but there are general restrictions for adults. Kids can still kind of have fun and take whatever. But there was some talk at one point about potentially earn a buck kind of thing or potential 2 buck tags in Pennsylvania, and you know I wasn't a huge fan of that only because I can remember when I was a kid growing up the deer population was the numbers were pretty good, but like the quality and age structure was pretty poor. And just what I've been able to see in just the past, like, let's say 10 years in Pennsylvania is markedly different and better, up and down than it was whenever I was a kid growing up. And I would hate to see them, go backwards, but I'll rely on the biologists and the people that look at the data and look at the science to tell us what we need to do. But I'm always leery whenever I hear 2 buck tags. I know Michigan does it, and there's of course some other states that do it, but I can't think of any states that have what you would consider to be upper echelon quality whitetails that have any more than one buck tag. Except I guess Iowa does, but it's like you can get your regular tag, you can get a landowner tag. There's a couple, but you have to be a landowner. I think that's the only way you can get multiple, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yeah. Depending on where you want to go in Iowa, it might take 5 points
Right.
to be able to get you there. So
Yeah.
for a non-resident, I think it's a different setup. But with some of the QDMA kind of outlook, I think some of the thoughts on people's the way that they're approaching wildlife management or specifically whitetail management has allowed the age structure of the age classes of the bucks maybe to get a little bit older.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just
than the
healthier
older.
for the herd overall. If you can have the right age structure, and of course the governing bodies of whatever state always typically take a beating from the residents. But I'd say by and large, like PA's done a better job, and I can see that I have better deer to chase than I can ever remember in my life at this point, which is a positive in my book. So Man, so you just got back from speaking of heat, you just got back from Florida, if I'm not mistaken, right? You were chasing some birds down there for the early turkey season, right?
Yeah, I actually was able to get invited down with a good friend of mine, Mike, and we went down and chased some Osceolas, and luckily all of us were successful. It was one of those opening mornings where it was just the ones that keep you going back. And
Yeah.
birds were talking. It was very, very exciting. I had so with my you know with the bird that I had come in and take, it was actually a set of three. All mature toms came in. We had a Jake decoy set up, a couple of hens, a laying hen, and they came in on a laser and annihilated that decoy.
Yeah.
It was such a show to watch. The dominant bird came in and basically just beat him to death, jumped over, and then another one was up on top of him when I shot the dominant bird, and then the other two probably hung around for about 5 or 6 minutes. We even started taking photos, and we could still see them about 60 yards just milling about, but they were not going to leave. There was no doubt that we could have tripled if we wanted to. So
Right.
it was just a really exciting morning.
Yeah, man. I mean, you sent me some videos of what you guys had going on, and those birds they were fired up looking for a fight. And that certainly, I mean, was the weather, I mean, was it like a nice, cool kind of hunt for Florida standards, like like I guess what was the weather like? Because I mean, if it's too cold in Florida, a lot of times they'll clam up. I've never hunted Florida, but at least it's what I've heard from my buddies who have gone down and have hunted. It's like if it gets too cold there, that you can have some issues. So how was the weather?
Well, the weather when I first got there was in the 90s, and they said it was the first hot spell. And I want to preface this: I am not a Florida turkey hunting expert. But what they were explaining, when I was down there, from the people that are really local, that hot patch they came through, and then this year it just happened to be like my buddy. He describes it as a 6-day window where things just get really, really good, and it can be extremely challenging if that window isn't timed right. So the year prior they had a terrible turkey season, and it happened early. Everything happened prior to the season opening because they're in the northern district,
Hmm.
and so it was completely dead last year. And then this year, the timing of the weather and when the rain had just hit, because you're coming off the dry season and starting to go into the wet season, and that is depending on when those rains come, can really make a difference.
Right.
So
Yeah.
everything was greened up, and they said it normally is brown.
Right, yeah, because a buddy of mine was down there last year, and he said exactly what you just kind of mentioned. It was just, I mean, he ended up killing one. I think it was actually on the last day that he was there, and I want to say he was there for like 5, 6 days, 7 days, something like about a week. And he said it was just awful. Like pretty much, you would hear a bird here and there, and you would try to go set up on it, and it would either no show you or just stop talking or whatever the case was, and it was. He's hunted Florida quite a bit too, so it was kind of odd because he was like he always looks forward to Florida because it's kind of what you're describing is usually I think what he's usually kind of been used to seeing, where it's just kind of bananas. You get a lot of action, a lot of fun, a lot of talking, And last year he just didn't have any of that. Well, that's cool, man, that you guys had a good setup. Was your buddy shooting? So I knew which one was your video when you sent it to me because I could see the smoke fly.
Yep.
But was your buddy hunting with a bow?
Yeah. So actually, both Mike and his wife Jen, they both hunted with bows. So after I shot my bird, then we were focused on getting Jen hers. We actually found a tom that was so fired up driving back that we left. Gave him a few hours after, came back, set up a blind for her, and then he and I called that tom in for her. And it was really great because that one, was like the bin of a hammock that we were hunting off of, and we couldn't pull the bird for quite a while. He would, talk to us but he just wouldn't commit to coming over. He had the spot where he was strutting, and he was strutting the exact same spot where he had left him like 3 hours earlier, and just driving by. And so what we started doing is we started just doing a double purr. So we just were, just sounded like a whole fighting mess. And he turned and came on a rope, and then came in from the blind, and she was able to get to be able to shoot him. And then the next day, we went out, and it was one of those slow days. We did have a great morning where I believe we would have been able to take one, but we actually called in a whole group of coyotes.
Jeez.
And they just, we could hear them putting and shutting up almost instantly. And I said, there are coyotes in this area. And then the next thing we saw was just a really dark coyote came through. And then he looped around. It was either him or another one, and actually came back and started barking at us. So we actually had to get up and push him off, but things were done after that. But went back to the same area, set up, kind of moved because we knew where the birds were down in a deep swamp. And we're able to pull a couple of birds and get and we actually, the way we called in Mike's is we got the hen mad, and she came in first, and he came following her. And so Mike was able to take that one. But even after that, we had the Jake patrol. I think we had about 10 Jakes come through that we just watched. And then we even had another set of 2 mature birds come in and get in front of us, that we were just giving his bird to make sure it had enough time to expire before we went in there, and didn't want to push it into the deep swamp. So we just gave it time and watched the show for another hour or 2 after that, and just called in more birds in the area just to watch them.
Nice. Yeah, man, that's quite a trip, man. That'll get you fired up. So are any more turkey hunts for the season? I mean, I'm guessing Montana at minimum.
Yes, absolutely. I've got going to be heading to get a Eastern in Georgia with Dr. Carl Miller.
Nice.
Going to be hunting with him. So I'll get an Eastern, hopefully, if knock on wood, can get an Eastern. And I will be doing archery for that one. And then here planning on taking a Merriam if I can get that. And then maybe if things work out that way, maybe I'll try and add a Rio into the mix. But
Nice.
that'd be nice to get the Slam all in 1 year.
Yeah, that would be, man. It's have you ever done the Slam before, or is this might be the first attempt?
Yeah, so I just completed the multi-year Slam by getting the Aussie, because I had never done that. But I have not done it in a single year. So
nice.
It seems like it might be a possibility this year. So perhaps I go after it.
Nice, man. Well, I hope that you do, man. That would be. We'll have you back on and talk about the 1 year Slam. How's that?
It would be good if I do decide to go for the Rio, then perhaps I'll do that.
Nice. Yeah, man. So my turkey hunting is not nearly as adventurous as yours. I'm more of just a PA kind of turkey guy, but I am excited for this season, just because I think you and we were texting the other day, and I'd mentioned there was this mountain area that I'd been scouting for deer and kind of hunting there. Got some really good prospects for deer that are there. And the snow it's receded finally, but it's always kind of a challenge to get up there to scout, because it's in a little bit of elevation, and it holds snow for longer. And it typically is just a little bit colder than it is where I live. It's 2 hours, 2.5 hours north of me. And so I'm actually going to go hunt turkeys there this year and hunt some mountain birds, which will be kind of fun to be able to kind of chase them across the mountain. Here in Pennsylvania, you can hunt the first 2 weeks, you can only hunt till noon. And then you got to stop. And so basically I'll be able to hunt till noon, on the opener on Saturday, scout the second half of the day. Sunday we can't hunt in PA. We're working on that, but we're not there yet. And so I'll scout all day Sunday, and then I'll hunt Monday morning, scout the afternoon, hunt Tuesday morning, and then drive back home. So I'll take a couple days off, pack up my little hunting trailer that I have off grid, bug out trailer that I have, and live in that for a couple days and chase turkeys and scout for whitetail. That's pretty much my plan for turkeys, but not nearly as adventurous as yours. But I'll enjoy being outdoors regardless.
Well, I have a great respect for hunting in that area too. It's not easy. I would say, for turkeys. So, anyone that takes one in your region, especially with all the public land up there, that's a really cool bird to be able to put, in your quiver. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it'll be fun, man. I'm looking forward to it, because a lot of the stuff is just around me. A lot of times what I do, we have a family farm, and I used to hunt deer back there pretty frequently, but I haven't been back there in years, and we have a hunting camp and stuff like that. And I hadn't gone back in years to hunt deer. And so what I started doing was just kind of going back and hanging out with the guys there. It's the guy who got me into archery hunting. He's kind of been my archery mentor. And my father-in-law and a bunch of his buddies, and just, a bunch of old timers, as I refer to them. They love that. So I usually try to go back for turkey season, to the family farm, and just, hang out with them, play cards, drink some beers. And, if I get up early enough in the morning to chase birds, then great. If not, it's more of just kind of spending some time with those guys. So this will be the first time in like a little while that I've actually been excited about getting out to actually like turkey hunt, to actually I have an objective. I'm going to go try to kill a bird. Usually it's drink some beers and hang out with the old timers and play cards. But this year it'll be chasing some mountain birds. So I'm looking forward to that. And the added bonus of trying to figure some stuff out for deer season doesn't hurt either. That's probably my biggest challenge between shed hunting and turkey hunting. Anytime I try to do either of them, it ultimately turns into a deer scout for me.
Yeah. Well, it's a good time of year to just go ahead and look at trails. And like you said, if you get out there early enough with the snow there, you can even find things even better. So from a deer standpoint.
Yeah, exactly. So with that, what I'm super stoked about, because truth be told, usually whenever I would head out to turkey hunt, I'd have like calls in my pockets and like not sure where anything is at. Whenever I'd sit down to call, it's like, well, what pocket did I put this in? Oh man, my striker fell out of my pocket back in this field or whatever. Like I've had that happen to me so many times, and I'm super stoked that you guys have developed the line of turkey gear that you guys have developed, particularly the vest, man. Because I was just playing around with it, over this past weekend, kind of checking it out, putting my gear in it, and literally sitting in my basement wearing it, which seemed really odd to my wife. And like everything else you guys have made, for whitetails and, Western hunting, extremely well thought out. It's everything that you need and nothing that you don't, and ridiculously streamlined, especially for someone who's going to be, running across, the mountainous terrain like I'm going to be chasing mountain birds. It's not prohibitive. It's not bulky. It has a compartment for everything that you need. And it's just really, really well thought out, like all the gear that you guys make. So take me, I guess, back to like, what was the genesis of this thing? Cause you guys obviously are well known for all your whitetail stuff, your Western stuff, your waterfowl stuff. What was the genesis for jumping, kind of into the turkey realm? And the subalpine stuff is great for turkey hunting. I've always worn that during that time of year. So there was always that kind of tie-in, but this is like a very specific piece, kind of going into a new category. So what was the genesis behind that?
Yeah, so it's really built for the mobile hunter, and you're exactly right with the viewpoint we take, with like Western big game hunting, or even like mountain whitetails or anything along those lines. You taking more of a kind of the way you might attack a pack, and putting that into the vest concept. So the actual chassis that the vest is built off of is really built off very similar to a pack structure. It's not built with a kitchen sink. So, you can find a lot of vests with a kitchen sink. I almost wound up, when I used those, I almost would lose everything in it because I had too much. And then also it was always sagging or dragging on my shoulders, things like that. So the pack setup is really built around that. It has like the pack structure is built a lot like our whitetail packs, where it allows flow. But then if you're leaning against a tree, which we often wind up doing, it has some padding back there for that as well. And then the seat tucks up. And it's in a unique, if you don't know how to use it, it's not going to be super intuitive, but like there's some videos on our website where you can clearly see Jim walking you through how to deploy the seat and pull it up, but it sits really right against your upper, or like the upper part of your rear end or your lower back. And so it's not flopping around like a lot of seats that I've had and used, they either come, with just the magnet on the back, they'll come undone, right?
Right.
And then
Yeah.
they're plop, 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 plop on your legs. This one, even when it's fully deployed, won't do that. And then when you pull it up, does not get in the way. So, it's just like a great running gun style setup. Like you said, a magnetic paw, like your pot calls, go inside of there, come in and out with your left hand.
Yep.
So if you think about how most people are using, right, they're holding their striker with their right hand, pulling things out, holding the pot call with their left hand, their friction calls that way. So we tried to think about even which hand, because what we didn't want you to do, and Jim was the head designer on this, but luckily being field test, like we were talking through it, and just popping out, so you're only using the same hand. You don't have to trade which side you're moving your pot call to,
right?
Or you use it striker in your right, pot call in your left.
Yeah, no, it's just super well thought out, man. Like some of my favorite stuff, honestly, the seat one was awesome. Like, and you're right. It did take me just like a minute to figure it out. And I did exactly what you said. I went to the website and just watched the video on it. And once you kind of see how it's used, you're like, oh, okay, that's pretty slick, and it does completely stay out of the way. The two things I appreciate is, one, I'm not a super tall guy. Like, I'm like 5'9" on a good day. And a lot of times when I get packs or vests or whatever, they don't always fit my torso correctly. And this is almost kind of like a Western pack to a degree, like a frame pack, where you can actually change the length of the shoulder straps based on your size. So there's like a small, there's a medium, there's a large kind of setting to change the straps and where the pack itself is actually going to sit on you, which is awesome, because a lot of times when I get something, it never fits quite right. And the adjustability is killer in it. And the other thing that I really like, and this is really more of like a this year thing, because I really probably would have never thought about it much before, but doing the mountain thing this year and knowing that I'm going to be scouting and hunting, full days, it's always a pain to try to take when I'm turkey hunting, 'cause it's like, I don't want to take a big pack, but I do need to carry water if I'm going to be doing this mountain thing and stuff like that. And the fact that I can just slide a bladder right into this thing and I'm good to go. It's one less thing that's flopping around on my hip, one less thing I have to worry about. It was just super slick and super cool. And then just like the rain pocket and stuff too, because it actually has way more space than you would think at first glance if you need it. But it all kind of compresses down to be super small and tight if you're a minimalist and taking next to nothing with you.
Yeah, nothing's going to be flopping, especially if you start to run, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the times too, one of my favorite tactics is just early in the morning calling till you can hear them on the roost, trying to close the gap right before they come down and set up. And so, it's just a really good setup for that. And if you have to do some belly crawling, things like that, everything, is going to fit tight to you. So, and the water bladder thing too, I've never, a lot of guys just, will take like a little, I guess, disposable water bottle and carry that with them. But, I find running the water bladder, once you start using that and start thinking that way, oh yeah, this is way more convenient. I don't even have to open up a crinkly bottle or anything like that. Just reach over, take the tube, drink it, and then keep moving. So
yeah, exactly. I was super stoked when I saw that, because that was the first thing I thought of. I was like, man, this is perfect. I was like, I don't have to worry about taking a bottle of water with me, where I'm going to stow it, anything like that. The other thing I was jazzed about was, like, typically I'm not a mouth caller. Like, I'm the world's worst mouth caller. So I usually just use a pot or or a box. And I haven't used a box in a while, just because the only box I have is literally from my great grandfather. It's a Lynch's. And it's, I want to say, I actually have it in my hand here because I have the vest here. It was actually made in 1958.
Ooh.
And it's actually it's slightly a collector. It's not worth like thousands of dollars or anything like that, but it's worth like a couple $100 or whatever, or something like that. It's actually a collectible, because it's one of the
that
first
one's priceless, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, totally priceless. And I've never used it and taken it turkey hunting with me, because I was always afraid that I was going to drop it, break it, or something like that, because I never had a good place to kind of stow it. Because again, I never wore any other turkey vests, because they just were always big, bulky, and I just didn't like them. And so I never took this thing out with me. And so this year, because it has a slick box call pocket, I'm actually going to be able to take my great grandfather's Lynch turkey call out with me this year. So I'm stoked on that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome if we were to take one. And yes, it does have like a Gore-Tex covering. So, and then the inside too is you'll see that very thick foam with like a 3D mesh on it.
Yeah.
That's really built to hold your box in place, so it's not going to it's not going to move. So a lot of times, I've had some where when you walk, you're in or
Yeah.
you use the rubber band to hold it in place or whatever.
Yep.
That thing just it slides in, and then won't make a peep when you're moving. So
Yeah.
it's a great setup for that.
Yeah. So I'm pretty jazzed to be able to actually take that this year out into the woods with me. And then of course, safety first. I always like to say safety first, but actually talk about it last. Is the you guys have some fluorescent flags that you can hang out the back, which I think is, especially in a state like PA, man, with as much pressure as we have, especially some of the pieces around me that are just kind of small, man, it's to me, this was like a feature that I was glad you guys didn't overlook, just because of like the tight quarters a lot of times in some of these small pieces of public around me that you're hunting in. Having something you can just kind of throw on your back real quick while you're moving from one spot to the next, super awesome.
Yeah, I think that's great. And a lot of times what you're throwing over your shoulder on the way out is the bird. So
Yeah.
having the orange back by the bird definitely helps. So
Exactly. And so not to be outdone by the pack, but the pack is killer, man. And I was super stoked whenever I got a chance to check it out. But you guys also, well, before I jump into the next thing, when I saw this immediately, you know me, I'm a whitetail guy, so I immediately have whitetails on the brain. I immediately saw that and I was like, dude, this is almost a perfect pack to hunt early season whitetails with, especially if I might have to sit or hunt from the ground or something like that. If I'm going to run out real quick after work and only be able to get like an hour hunt in and I'm not going to climb anything, man, I would throw this pack on and just and run out. I got a bladder, I got something to drink, good to go, got a seat. Like it's lightweight, like it would almost be the perfect like run and gun like whitetail pack, especially for early season.
well, that's a good dual purpose.
That's right. That's right. Speaking of whitetails, not to be outdone. I know you guys had like so the Equinox kind of whitetail early season system that you guys had previously. Do you have an evolution of this now that's part of this turkey gear that you guys have put out? It's the Equinox Guard, right? No, I got the name right, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah.
So this one for me was actually a really big personal passion, and I know that you and probably anybody that's listening will be able to relate to this. So everyone that I know either has had or knows somebody or has a family member that has had a tick-borne illness.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is, and especially if you're in the Northeast, Lyme disease is rampant there.
Yeah.
And those, that's not stuff that we saw, 20 years ago. And I worked with Dr. Colin Miller, who ran the UGA Deer Lab, but I didn't know this for a number of years, but his early background is in entomology. Mm. So, and being able to work with him on this, just understanding how they work and how they've grown in prevalence across the country, and they're discovering now more diseases. So there's about 16 recognized tick-borne illnesses out there. Some that are virus can transmit to you extremely quickly. Where Lyme disease, if they camp out on you for 24 hours or more, then you run in a higher risk. But I mean, there's all sorts of different things from Lyme disease to Rocky Mountain spotted fever to the deer tick virus to like the alpha gal syndrome where you mm-hmm. can't eat red meat because of the glucose molecule. So those are things that I know a lot of hunters are going to face more and more. And my own daughter has had Lyme disease, or we think star eye. It may have been since we were in the South, but it's very, very similar. And then, Dr. Carl's had 2 separate tick-borne illnesses. I've got, friends with family members. And so that was really something I want to involve. So I can tell you by using the Equinox Guard system, since I started using it 3 years ago, I've had 0 ticks. Wow. And I would normally pluck 3 to 5 to 6 off of me a year.
Yeah.
And pull off 15 or more off my pants or crawling on me. But, usually I would get one buried in me a couple every year.
Yeah.
And do so. The way that it works is we use both mechanical and chemical means. So on the pants, for example, there's some internal leg gaiters that you basically put on the pants. You'll take your socks and you'll roll them over the top of the internal leg gaiters,
okay,
and then put that hem down.
Yeah, whenever I was trying them on and I was putting them on, I noticed that right away, and I was like, I made a point to write it down. I was like, I need to ask him what these are for inside the pants, but now that totally makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's like one mechanical means that we use. So it's a special knit, which I'll go into later on, that we use for that. But that goes in there extremely lightweight. You can't feel it, but that's the mechanical means. So now if you have a tick, a lot of times they'll come up crawl up under the hem of your pant, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to run into that internal leg gaiter. And then this is where the permethrin base comes in. So we use insect shield. And this isn't just like a spray on application. This is infused for the life of the garment. So it's a very, very high temperature process, but we take the actual completed pant, we put it through the insect shield process, and then that actually infuses permethrin into the garment for 75 more washes. It has still the efficacy rate is very, very, very good. And we use there's a drop away test. So basically you measure how long it takes for tick to drop off or off of the product. So they'll hang that up, they fall down. And that's the idea, is the mechanical prevents them from ever contacting your skin. By the time the permethrin takes effect, then they'll drop away. And you're not bringing them home into your laundry hamper, into your home, and potentially bringing home to one of your family members.
Right. Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. And I'm the same way as you. A couple year I pull off myself, and usually like one gets bad enough that leaves a mark essentially for a year. I've had them where I've had them a mark or a bump for like a year. And so they're nasty. Of course, all the problems with them that you mentioned beyond just kind of being sucky, pulling them off of you. You mentioned knit when we were talking about those leg gaiters. Because I'm feeling this and it feels like the shirt. You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to describe maybe for the people who are listening, like it would feel similar to not completely dissimilar to what the the very, very lightweight subalpine base layer is. It feels
the core lightweight.
Yeah, the core lightweight. It feels similar to that. But talk to me about how this was made, because I know you guys, for all of this, I believe there was a specific kind of machine that you guys had to find to even be able to do this, because there's not just the tick guard, but you're also able to kind of combat the chiggers and mosquitoes and things that are going to want to bite you. And anyone who's hunted a swamp in turkey season or hunted in early whitetail season, you can put on whatever thin long sleeve thing you want to put on, and you're still going to get ate up by mosquitoes. But you guys found some machine that was able to knit a certain way, if I was reading the information right, that was able to kind of combat that, right?
Correct. So when I look at the pant, I think about ticks and chiggers, right? Ticks from a health standpoint, chiggers from just the world's
misery,
worst annoyance in the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, that's really what the pant's about. But then the hoodie was developed you're correct. It's an extremely high gauge knit machine. It's not just like a regular type of knit that we're using. So you're going to find it very lightweight. It's a combination of using the high gauge knit and proper stretch. And then the way that we test that is we partnered with a third-party lab. And what we did is we developed a blood membrane test. But basically, we take a heated blood and put it in just like a membrane that allows us to heat it up to human temperature. And essentially, then we put different types of textiles over that. We release 20 female Aedes aegypti mosquitoes into a cage. So they're all females because only the females are feeding on you. So we'll release those into a cage. We'll leave them in for 20 minutes. And then what we do is we take that cage out and we put it in a freezer for a little bit. That knocks them down. And then it's just as simple as laying them out and squishing them. If they turn red, they fed. If they didn't, they're just a black squish. And so you can measure actually the feeding rate that the different textiles. So we'll use a control textile that they allow them to feed through. And then we can test like different types of instructions to figure out which ones would reduce the feeding rate. And it's not something that we're trying to get to 100%, because what we're doing is trying to reduce the number and balance the difference. There's a couple of things you can do to prevent mosquitoes, right? You could wear a big, thick 3D mesh that you've seen suits, right?
Yep.
Those are uncomfortable. They're bulky. You have a very difficult time shooting a bow with them, all those different types of things.
Yep.
You can use DEET. Well, we know there's problems with DEET. That's why we try and minimize it, right? Because it's known to cause cancer. You can use Thermacell, which is a great product for controlling mosquitoes, but it does have scent.
Yep.
And then, you can wear double layers of some certain things, but, who wants to wear double layers when it's 85, 90 degrees outside?
Exactly.
So those are all things that you can do. This thing feels extremely lightweight and really reduces the number of bites that you'll take. So, for example, I use that on a spring bear hunt with my wife. We went in with that core lightweight hoodie that you were talking about. I probably took 50 different bites in my back. It was so bad that after like 30, 40 minutes, we're out.
Right.
We came back to the same spot using the prototypes that we had and took no bites. This past weekend, I was wearing it in Florida, and those mosquitoes down there are like pterodactyls.
Oh yeah, they're no joke, man. I lived in Florida for like 10 years. Like you get carried away by one of those.
Yeah, and the sound like before light, and they all just typically are feeding like in that little bit before the sun comes up. And I remember I was sitting there. So Mike's wife Jen was wearing the core lightweight hoodie. I was wearing those, and I was like, hey, I'm just wondering, how many bites have you taken since we've been sitting here for 15 minutes? She was like, I don't know, 15, 20 in my back. It's I didn't have any. And then like throughout the hunt, I had maybe a few I felt through, like maybe 2 or 3 bites in my back shoulder, where I know I would have just had one solid welt across my back.
Yeah.
So it's really designed to reduce the number of bites, and then it's also treated with the insect shield. So what we're just trying to do is I want people to be comfortable while wearing it, so they'll actually wear it, and then allow them to, just reduce the chance of taking as many mosquito bites.
Yeah. I mean, killer garment, dude. And again, like my brain immediately like awesome for turkey hunting because obviously you have warm weather, especially here in Pennsylvania because our season comes in end of April-ish, so you're typically hunting May for the most part. So you definitely are having warmer weather. But then immediately my mind went again to like dual purpose, right? Because people when they're spending money or whatever, it's like how can you amortize those dollars across other use cases? And it's like, to me, if you hunt any warm weather for whitetails that is buggy and hot, this is like the go-to thing. That was immediately what I thought of because I hunt a lot of, especially early season, I hunt around a lot of swamps, because a lot of people don't want to hunt in those areas when it's hot because it's shitty. It is buggy, it is mosquito-y, and it's miserable. But that's kind of why I go there, because it keeps people away. But now with this, man, it's like I feel like I'll be much more comfortable and willing to go out and not just deal with the heat, but also deal with the bugs and come back a little happier and a little less and keep more of my blood in my body, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a glove that goes on. It's the same textile on the back of the hand, because that's where typically you take those bites. And we do any warm weather pursuit that you're going to run into mosquitoes. It could be spring bear, it could be hog hunting, turkey hunting, deer hunting, moose hunting, all of those different things. But anywhere there's going to be a lot of bugs, I definitely recommend people do it. And I just also want to point out, like, we built the tail of the hoodie extremely long.
I noticed that, actually. I was going to ask you because,
tuck it in.
Okay.
Tuck it in. So one of the best things you can do is, remember, you want to think of all the different mechanical means that you're doing to keep them from contacting your skin. So a tick lands on your leg, crawls up, and you have your shirt untucked. With that permethrin, in the garment through the insect shield, that tick is eventually going to fall off. That tick would have to literally crawl up, come in by your neckline, come down, when you're wearing this the right way.
Yeah.
So all of those things enacted together, it allows the permethrin to do its work. And and because it's in there, a lot of people will ask me, like, oh, do I have to retreat? You can pour permethrin in your washer or treat it that way, or you can spray it on. The answer is no, you don't have to retreat.
Right.
There's no, and it is like, this is like the lowest. You can put it on a baby onesie.
Yeah.
The way that it's done. So there's a couple of different things in order to give it the lowest level that the EPA allows for permethrin. So it's even a lower level than like a spray-on permethrin or a retreatment, just because it's actually requires no reapplication and is actually built into the fibers at that point.
Yeah, and it's super cool because but it was actually one of the old timers, a guy who got me into bow hunting. He's actually an awesome turkey hunter. Dude kills turkeys like it's nobody's business. And I was texting with him the other night, and I'd mentioned like I was like I'm checking out the Equinox Guard stuff, and told him what it was about. And he's had Lyme's disease. He got actually pretty sick from it. So he's always kind of nervous about it. And I kind of told him what the garment was, and he was like, really? He's like, how long does it last? And I was like, and he's in his 60s now, and this is maybe kind of morbid, but I was like, dude, I'll be putting you in a box in this thing. I was like, don't worry about it. But that's kind of a morbid way to say, man, it's like 70 wash cycles. It's like, and I typically wash my gear at the beginning of the season, and then at the end of the season, unless it gets bloody or extremely like muddy or something like that. And so, I mean, you're looking at, you'll outgrow it width-wise before you will have to replace it because it ran out of juice. Put it that way.
Yeah, and that's just the rating that they use to remeasure the efficacy. And to encourage anybody to go look at Insect Shield's website, they have some great information on the testing that they do on there. So and that's the way I look at this too. Is would you rather invest in this, or would you rather like invest in having to deal with like all the debilitating type of things that can happen if you don't catch Lyme disease very early, right? Yeah. There are people that are dealing with this for years. And so, now if it's warm and I know I'm going in a buggy environment, I will wear it every single time. Yeah. It's just not worth it for me. And it's comfortable wearing it too. So that's a big part of it.
Exactly. Man, I always have to ask you this, and you can deny to answer if you'd like to, but you guys are always coming up with super cool stuff. Is there anything that you have on the horizon that you can, and you don't have to speak in specific terms, but is anything cool that you're working on right now?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm always working on new things. So, every trip that I'm taking, I'm using new products. So we all have some very cool stuff coming out this summer that you'll see just start to roll out. I can't say what it is because it is embargoed. Right. But we will be releasing more stuff, and like I said, I'm not even done working on the stuff we just talked about today. So we'll constantly figure out how to make it better. You're always learning as you go, and people using stuff will give you feedback, and you're like, oh yeah, we can make that a little bit better. So constant improvement.
Nice. Awesome, man. Well, job well done, man. Like usual. You guys always knock it out of the park with new gear and thinking about, putting the hunter at the center of the experience and creating new garments, man. So definitely appreciate that. Appreciate you coming on, man. Before I let you jump off here, let people know where they can find out, more about the gear and then keep an eye out for anything that's happening in the summer.
Yeah, absolutely. SitkaGear.com. If you just go there, you'll see that. If you're interested in learning more about the Equinox Guard, got a great making of video. So if you go to SitkaGear.com/Equinox Guard, it'll take you right there, and you can take a look at that, or you'll probably find the information on the vest. And Jim's got a great video taking you through, so you get the most out of the vest if you do invest in that.
Yeah, and I would recommend signing up for the newsletter as well, just to kind of if you're interested to stay apprised, when new things drop, to be first in line. So, Chris, I appreciate you coming on, brother. It's always good catching up with you, man. Good luck in chasing that slam this year. I'll keep an eye on what you're up to, and I'll let you know how the mountain birds shake out.
Absolutely, I can't wait to hear about it.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. If you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And while you're at it, head over to YouTube and give us a sub there as well. I'd be super appreciative if you do those couple things for me. And before I shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible: Tether, Spartan Forge, Exodus, and Skull Brew Coffee Company. And until next time, we'll see y'all.